I can't act as if nothing happened, right? I can't restore it. I can't just get another, I can't replace. And I can't just redesign a new life. When there's a relationship or a person in your life that's significant enough that you know, I can't live as if nothing's happened, nothing's changed. I can't do that. Hi, my name is Father Mike Schmitz, and this is Ascension Presents. Whether this is a loss of a relationship, loss of status, loss of health, anything that's familiar to us that we're going to miss. We have 4 typical responses to loss. And those 4 responses are to restore, to replace, to redesign, or to relinquish. So the first one is restore. And so basically, I want to get this thing back. So if you want to think relationship, that could be like you're pining after that person to try to take them back. But it doesn't have to be relationships. It could be something like, okay, again, for our students, they have this life. And for roughly 4 years, they live this life on campus that has a particular kind of community to it. It has particular friends to it. It has a rhythm to it. It has a lot of freedom from responsibility to it. I mean, of course, there's some responsibility, but there's a lot of freedom. And so here is the loss of that. And there's this desire to, I want to get that back. I want to live as if nothing has changed. I'll do whatever I can to act as if it didn't even happen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to recreate a life that looks exactly like the life I left. I'm just going to try to restore this. Now, which is very similar to replace. I'm going to get something new, right? So this is more, maybe this is a better example of when it comes to relationships, right? So there's a breakup of some sort and the rebound relationship. They went from one relationship to the next because when it came to that loss, their impulse was always to replace. So I don't have that quote unquote person in my life. And now I just need to get a new one. I'll replace that person. The same thing can happen when it comes to almost anything. When it comes to bad habits in their lives, here's the loss. I should no longer smoke like I do. I should no longer drink like I do. I should no longer behave like I do. So I'm going to get rid of those things, but I'm going to replace them with something. Now, again, none of these 4 responses are bad responses. To restore it's not a bad response. To replace, it's not a bad response. As I said, there can be times when it's like I'm getting rid of a bad habit. I'm going to replace that bad habit with a good habit. That's pretty smart. Because why? Because we know that nature abhors a vacuum, right? So if I don't actually put something good in place of that something bad, there's going to be a big hole and something bad is going to sneak in. And so the desire to replace is not necessarily bad, but also the question we get to ask is it merely automatic? Is it instinctual? Or am I intentionally and wisely choosing the replacement? We know there's people who go from one relationship to the next relationship to the next relationship. Is that thoughtful? Is that wise for them? Or should they have a season where they're not trying to replace what they lost? Now, the third, right, so we have restore, we have replace, we have redesign. And redesign is you take the old thing and from it you make something new. And right, that's redesign. So an example here could be, I'm no longer a college student here on campus, but I'm going to stay in the campus town. I'm going to stay in that college town. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those elements that I really like and I'm going to redesign a newer life, right? So instead of like making a break from this time, I'm going to redesign. Again, none of these are bad in and of themselves. We're in the city of Duluth, Minnesota. And so not a lot of our students get to live here after they graduate. Now, all of them want to live here after they graduate, but it's just that kind of city that doesn't necessarily have the support system for every one of the graduates to get a job here in town. So a lot of times they will move down to the Twin Cities or St. Paul, Minneapolis, or somewhere else. The redesign phase could be this, could be like, okay, who are the other students who are moving back to the town that I'm moving to? And how do I redesign a new friendship out of those old friendships? These aren't necessarily negative. They can be really, really positive. For example, we have a bunch of our students who they're in Bible studies while they're in college here. Then they graduate. Then they leave. And what they could do is they could say like, that was what happened when I was in college. I used to do Bible studies when I had less responsibilities, when I had more freedom. What they a lot of times do is say, okay, who are the men and women that I was in Bible studies with while I was in college? Now that we're living somewhere else, I'm going to redesign that. Like I'm going to take some of those great elements that I had in college and I'm going to recreate something new or redesign something new out of what was old. Again, sometimes this restore and replace and redesign can be grasping. And sometimes it can be wisely intentional. The last R, or the last response to loss, is relinquish. And sometimes that's the only thing left to do. You know, I think of couples who have spent their whole lives together, and then one of them is taken. You know, this person is left as a widow or a widower. Like, yeah, I can't just live as if nothing's changed. And I don't want to replace them. You know, I don't want to find another romantic partner, because it's not the desire of my heart. And I can't redesign something, but I can at some point just let them go. I don't mean just let them go in the sense of like, I don't think about them, it doesn't matter to me. But there's that sense of I can relinquish the wanting it to be different. I hope that no one ever goes through this tragedy, but I know so many parents have. And the tragedy of losing a child. One of the great pains of so many couples that I know who have lost children really young, whether that would be children in the womb or children just after they're born, is sometimes well-meaning people say, well, you're still young, you can have more kids. But you know the truth. You can't replace the child who died. And you can't just act as if nothing happened. I mean, again, that sometimes happens. Well-meaning people who care about us, they would say something to like this to those couples. They would say things like, you know, it's easy to forget. Well, it's easy to forget for you if you're on the outside, but those husbands and wives who are in the midst of this, who already lived for 10 weeks or 15 weeks or 20 weeks or more with the knowledge of there's a child in our family right now. They can't just act as if that didn't happen. And so the only thing left in so many ways is I can relinquish. What I mean by that is not I don't care. Relinquish means at some point I can entrust this person, this relationship, entrust this great gift that I had, and place it in the hands of the Father. I can say, this has broken my heart, this has broken my life. And now, into your hands, Father, I surrender. I surrender this person, this relationship. I surrender this dream. I surrender this past way I used to be or this way I used to live. And I can actually relinquish this in order to move forward in faith. Again, those 4 responses, none of them are always right. None of them are always wrong. And no one's in a rush to do any one of them. But if we're going to go into transition really well, we should go through these things very intentionally and not simply by default. So, with the losses that you have in your life, what should you do? Should you try to restore? Should you try to replace? Should you try to redesign? Or is it time to relinquish? To entrust this loss into the hands of the God who loves you and loves them, and trust. Anyways, for all of us here at Ascension Presents, my name is Father Mike. God bless. And those 4 responses are to restore, to replace, to redesign, or to restore, to replace, to whenever scoozy.